This is a tech demo video of the new Canon DP-V2730 reference HDR monitor.
CineD, your digital cinema tech resource, supported by B&H and CVP.
Hi, my name is Nino from CineD here at IBC 2022. We're at Canon with Aaron. How are you?
Hi Nino, I'm doing great, thanks. How are you doing?
It's good to see you in person again. We had a lot of virtual conversations with you over the last few years. So I forgot how tall you are, but it's good to be reminded. No, it's nice to see you in person.
Yeah, you too.
And here we are today to talk about a new HDR monitor you guys introduced. I think it's called DP-V2730 because I guess it's 27 inch.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about it?
There's so much I can tell you about this monitor. I've spoken about a lot of fantastic Canon products with you guys in the past, but this is actually my personal favorite because it's representing the pinnacle of imaging technology, not just at Canon, but in the industry when it comes to reference monitors. And this 27-inch is a very unique size. It's a hybrid for both broadcast and for filmmakers. So you can use it for post-production, for VFX, for editing, but also it could be used in a studio because it's small enough to be used in a studio, large enough to be used in post-production, could even be used at home for people who are working more from home.
So it is, I heard, the blacks are very good, right? You can go down to 0.01 nits, right? Yeah, which is an important thing.
Yes, 0.001 nits, and this is a grade 1A panel, so it's giving you 1,000,000 to 1 contrast ratio, and the reason the blacks can go so low on this LCD is that it has local dimming array, but also it's got 1,000 nits of brightness, and that's not just a small window of the screen. The entire screen can be at 1,000 nits at the same time for as long as you want it to be. So that is perfect for HDR grading for both television and HLG as well as in PQ because that's the industry standard. But it's not just the brightness performance that's phenomenal, it's also the color. So the color is incredibly a wide color gamut that's almost the size of Rec 2020. So roughly about 90%.
So for the first time we can actually see Rec 2020 with this monitor?
As far as the industry has gone, this is the best we can get, and it's absolutely phenomenal. And if there's something that this monitor can see, there's no other monitor out there that can see that. So that's really exciting. Also, the connectivity is completely uncompromised. We've got 4 12G SDI terminals, so you can have 4K 60p signals at the same time. But also, those signals can have their own picture profiles. You could have one in HDR, one in SDR, one with a LUT applied to it, one in log. So the possibilities are really endless as to what you can do.
So this is 10-bit color, 12-bit color?
Yep, it's a 10-bit 4K UHD panel. And it's also an LCD single panel, so there's a lot of longevity of this display is incredibly good. It's going to give you that 1,000 nits for at least 10 years. And we're not using dual LCDs either. This is a single panel, so it has minimal ghosting and will last a very long time.
Very cool. I think it also has an HDMI in, right?
Yeah, so 4 12G SDI ins, 1 HDMI in, and other than the incredible performance of the image quality, one of the really big, unique things about Canon reference monitors as a whole, whether it's our 27, 18, or 31-inch monitor, is our exclusive and award-winning HDR monitoring tools. And these are tools that help color graders, that help broadcasters completely understand every aspect of the HDR image, because there's so much that we are now judging with our eyes, which was possible with SDR. You could judge skin tones with SDR, but now that we've got such a massive scale of brightness and color, we can't rely on our eyes anymore. Even in live environments, we need the tools to analyze the image, and we have a huge array of them. The best way for me to really talk about them is actually to give you a quick demo of how they work.
Let's look at that in a second. I just wanted to touch on what you said with HDR in general. I think it's a bit of a catch-22 with HDR because, first of all, you need to explain to the audience what it is. Usually, most of them don't have HDR displays, right? So you can't even, people will have to be in front of one to understand what the difference is. I think with TVs now, it's getting there slowly, and actually with phones, the irony for me always is that computer screens mostly are not HDR displays. So if you look at a normal desktop computer or even a laptop, they are not HDR displays. But you have now, on the latest iPhones or Android phones with OLED, you do have HDR displays, and people are starting to have HDR TVs, but somehow the normal desktop experience or laptop experience isn't HDR. And it's very difficult also for us to actually show the possibility of dynamic range of cameras when we know that most of the people are watching the reviews, the videos on SDR displays. Having said that, and then when you do an HDR grade, you need to be careful because it looks different on an SDR display. Is there a way, just my naive question, I know HLG and all these things, but is there a way to have one video that you can send to people that watch it on SDR and HDR monitors that looks great on both? Or is it always a big compromise?
So there's a lot of different ways of utilizing HDR. So HLG is actually already a backwards compatible system. It's limited to 1000 nits, but what's really good about it and perfect for broadcasters is they can focus on the HLG image and they'll know that they don't need to grade it again for SDR. They might just have to make a small adjustment in gain and that's it. But then when it comes to the world of Dolby Vision and PQ, then it's more of a metadata thing. So the Dolby Vision will have ways of in a single file to have 1000 nits, 2000 nits, an SDR all in one, but you still need to make sure that metadata is correct. And that's where reference monitors like this are really powerful, because you can actually analyze both your HDR and SDR at the same time. You may think that they're both great, but having the option to see them side by side, you can understand if there's any elements of the storytelling or anything important that's been missed on one of those, so that you can adjust it. So at least viewers are getting a similar experience on both. But of course, when it comes to that incredible brightness and color gamut and smooth gradients, it's always going to look phenomenally better in HDR.
Yeah. I mean, that's the irony of it, isn't it? I mean, you have cameras that are very affordable now, which give you the chance to shoot in log with a huge dynamic range, but then most people don't have the tools to actually properly deal with this in order to not kind of crush everything and then in the end just have a Rec 709 image.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the world's changing though, in the sense that even production companies who are doing things for corporate or any type of marketing material, the demand for HDR is increasing year by year. And I think it's not the easiest step for people to walk into, but having a monitor that can show you the accurate image, but also, more importantly, give you the technical information you need to know that that image is within specification, I think that's really going to help people in that transition.
Okay, let's dive into a little bit of a tech demo of what you can do with the Canon tools on a new monitor.
So the first tool that I would like to show you is the Waveform Monitor and Vector Scope. A very standard tool that you would expect in any reference monitor on the market. And what I currently have playing back on the screen is some Canon Log 3 footage that hasn't been graded. So it looks quite washed out and compressed, as we can see on the Waveform Monitor. But I would like to show you how you can configure these tools to your own liking to help you in the grading process or when you're evaluating content in a broadcast environment. So before I start adjusting this image in DaVinci Resolve, I just want to show you some of the options that you have on the Waveform Monitor that helps take it a step further as to what the possibilities are. So at the moment, I've got a scale of 0 to 100 IRE because I'm in an SDR environment, but I could change that to PQ going up to 10,000 nits, HLG going up to 1,000 nits, or different log gamma scales from different manufacturers, including Canon, Sony, and Arri. For now, I'll keep that to IRE, but I can also add a reference level. So my reference level on the 10-bit scale, I've added a high reference level of 940 and a low reference level of 64. And the reason I've done that is to create my own type of broadcast safe region. And it'll tell me if I'm clipping any of my shadows or if the highlights are overexposed. So now, as I start to apply contrast to the image, if I take the image too far down, I can see my reference area blue at the bottom of the waveform monitor that I'm clipping the shadows. So I'm just going to rise that a little bit to make sure it's within that broadcast safe region. And then I'm now going to apply a it's going to increase the highlights. And as I do that, you can see as I take it too far, I get a purple region telling me that I'm close to clipping my image. So now I have managed to apply a maximum contrast to this image without losing information in the highlights and in the shadows. And now I'm going to move on to the next tool, which is false color, and I'm going to change the footage from SDR to HDR. So this is a HDR PQ clip that has been graded to 1000 nits. It currently it seems washed out because we're set to SDR, but as I go to PQ, you can see this incredibly rich and beautiful HDR image. And with the false color, as many of us know from using cinema cameras as well as reference monitors, sorry, 1 second. We can see that we now have a scale for HDR going from 0 to 10,000 nits. But false color is a way of looking at exposure through a different color scale, but Canon always takes it a step further in allowing you to adjust that scale to your liking for your own use case. So I'm now going to go into the false color menu, and you can see that I can actually change the color scale for every single color. I can change that scale exactly to my liking, but I can even add a color on top of that. And this is fantastic for skin tones. So this takes HDR false color to the next level. Usually we just use it for exposure and for 18% gray, but now I can use it for skin tones. So I've added a new region between 10 to 40 nits. And it's recommended by the ITU that when you're grading in HDR, skin tones should be between 10 to 110 nits, depending on the skin tone of your subject. My subject has dark skin, so it's recommended that the skin tone should be between 10 to 40 nits. So I've now added this range, and I can see the majority of the skin tones are within that range, but I can make a small tweak to make sure that all of them are within that range. So just at the flick of a switch, I can just double check that those skin tones are correct. I can even take it a step further with an exclusive tool to Canon called Pixel Value Check. So this is a really cool, probably my favorite tool out of all of them. It allows me to deep dive into the image and select any pixel I want, and I get a wealth of information. So if I go onto the blue sky here, it will tell me that this pixel is specifically 169 nits, and it will tell me the coordinates on the CIE chart as to what color that is as well. And this could be used for many different ways. You could have a very high contrast image. You want to double check that a window isn't overexposed, or maybe you have multiple people with different skin tones and you just want to double check those, or you have a color that seems oversaturated and you want to pinpoint that color and dial it down. So that's a really powerful tool. So that was Pixel Value Check. I'm now going to move over to another one called Over Range Check. Now, what Over Range Check does is it makes the entire image monochrome, and it allows me to select a brightness cap that I'm working with. It could be 600 nits, 1000 nits, and so on. Right now, it's set to 1000 nits in PQ, and I can't see anything above that because this has been graded to 1000 nits. But you'll notice that when I increase the brightness, then it highlights to me specifically in red that those areas have gone above 1000 nits. And this is really useful. It's quite similar to false color, but it doesn't mix up with any other types of colors. So it's very useful for QC checking. And even if I was to bring this down, quite often if there's only certain small areas like reflections in the oceans that have gone above, that's very difficult to see in false color. It's also difficult to see on a waveform monitor, but this is just alerting people to those areas very quickly for their attention. And we have a very similar concept with out of gamut check. So out of gamut check makes it monochrome again, but this time instead of brightness, it's showing me anything that's outside of the Rec. 709 color space. And I can combine a lot of these fantastic tools. So if I combine Pixel Value Check, I can then investigate exactly what's going on here. How bright is that pixel, and what is the color that's going outside of Rec. 709? So I can see on this CIE chart that this is going just outside of Rec. 709 on the blue. And then I can dial that back down. Even though a lot of software, for example, might be able to do this for you, we can also change this from showing you any colors that are going outside of the native gamut of this display. So if there is a color that's outside of that huge Rec 2020's color space that this monitor can show, then it can alert you to that. And there's no point in encoding that because you know all of the displays on the market currently can't see that color. So it's just giving you an idea as to how much of Rec 2020 or 709 you're using, and if any of those colors are leaking out of that. Another really powerful, and maybe my favorite tool out of all of them, is how you can have HDR and SDR on the same side, side by side on the same monitor. So currently I've got PQ HDR running on the monitor, and I'm going to enable something called Compare View. And what Compare View's done is the monitor has internally converted PQ HDR to Rec 709 on the right. I can even change the gain of the Rec 709 on the right, and I can see the waveform monitor of both. So this one's going up to 10,000 nits, and this is on IRE. And this is a really powerful tool for broadcasters. So imagine you're doing a live event like the World Cup, and it's being broadcasted in HLG and SDR at the same time, and you need to get the exposure of your cameras correct. This will very quickly tell you how it's looking in HDR, but also make sure that the SDR isn't too dark or too bright. And if it is too dark, maybe you might want to adjust the gain, and then you'll know what that ratio is. It's also very powerful for people who are grading. Maybe you wouldn't use the internal conversion, but you can use the 12G SDI input to do the same thing, where you've got your SDR grade on the right and HDR grade on the left, and you can see the creative differences between the two and make sure that they're both really well balanced. The final function that I'd like to show you, this isn't all of them by any means, there's so many things that this monitor can do, but this one is also exclusive to Canon monitors, and it's called Frame Luminance Monitor. And what it is, it's like a waveform monitor, but it works over time. And we're seeing, as the scene changes, we're seeing the average and the peak brightness change. So you will understand when you're watching a sequence that you're editing, how that brightness is changing throughout. And if you were matching two shots, you will see how well those shots match as well. And finally, when it comes to the monitoring tools, because we've got so many different complex tools that are giving you such a wealth of information, sometimes that can really overload the screen and overlay the image, and it would obstruct the image. So we've now introduced a new function called Multi-Information View, which essentially allows you to use multiple tools at the same time while still being able to see the full image that's non-obstructed. So I hope that gives you an idea of the immense amount of things that these monitors can do. They're not only just grade 1 panels with phenomenal performance, but they really do help you in transitioning into this new HDR world and understanding every aspect of the signal that you're creating. And in addition to all of those amazing monitoring tools and fantastic image quality of the DP-V2730, we also have a function called the 4-way SDI switcher that's available in the DP-V2730 and the 1830 with a paid license. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to connect one monitor to another monitor and switch the input. So you can see now I've switched the input from this video using this monitor to this video on that monitor. And essentially what that's doing is it's using an additional SDI output on the monitor. So you could have 4 camera feeds going into a monitor, and then you could send a single camera feed to the director's monitor or to a live broadcasting solution or something like that. So that's just adding another function to these monitors and reducing the amount of hardware that you might need in a live multicam solution.
All right, thank you, Aaron. That was a very good, extensive demo. I think it's necessary to show these tools for people in order, to understand, because it's always one thing to talk about something and the other thing to show it. But it's very complex, it's not something I could do. It's a lot to learn, I think, with HDR monitoring. And one thing we have to add, of course, you are watching this most likely on an SDR display. And even if you watch it on an HDR display, this is not an HDR video that you just watched. So of course, try and see this monitor in person if you're interested, because to have the wide color gamut, you really need to see it in person. There's no way we can kind of transfer this to you at home or at your office or wherever you are, the way it looks in real life. But I think it was still a good demo. The little bit of flickering you might have seen is because of the camera refresh refresh rate. We try to adjust it, but every monitor is a little bit different, and I saw that with some scenes there was a little bit of flicker, but rest assured that this was all only in the camera, not in real life. Thank you, Aaron. Thanks for taking the time, and yeah, have a good show.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nino.
Thanks everybody for watching, and stay tuned to CineD for a lot more from IBC 2022. And please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks.